First, let's review what a percent is. A percent is a ratio compared to 100. Now let's review going between different forms, percents, fractions, and decimals. If I'm going from a decimal to a percent, I'll just take my decimal. Let's say we have 50 hundredths, and I want to change it to a percent. I can multiply by 100%. That's like multiplying by 1. And we know that multiplying by 100 moves your decimal 2 places to the right. A lot of students aren't sure which way to move the decimal, so if you remember, if you're going to a percent, you multiply by 100. And again, I'm going to put times 100%, and this also reminds me to put my percent sign with my answer, and that's 6.4%. We can use that same process for fraction to percent. You're probably familiar with some of your basic percents. For example, most of us know that 1/2 is 50%, but again, we can say, okay, we're changing to a percent, so we're multiplying by 100%. I'll just put that over 1. And we can reduce, 2 goes into 100 50 times, that is 50%. Let's change this mixed number to a percent. The first thing we want to do is change it to just a fraction. So 20 times 1 is 20, plus 7 is 27. And I'm multiplying by 100%. And I'm going to go ahead and do some reducing, make it a lot easier. 20 goes into itself 1 time and to 100 5 times. And 27 times 5 is going to give me 135%. Now, if I'm going backwards, let's say I want to go from a percent to a decimal. Let's say I have 75%. Well, I can divide by 100%. That means that's taking the percent sign off. If you divide that out and get a decimal in your head or on your calculator, dividing by 100 is going to move the decimal back 2 places. There's your decimal. And again, the decimal, the percent has come off. We've changed from a percent to a decimal. Let's say we have 3%. We want to get away from that percent, so we're dividing it out. That gives me 3 hundredths, or as a decimal, 3 hundredths. Same thing with a fraction. If I want to do a percent back to a fraction, okay, let's say I have 80%. I'll put that over 100. My percents cancel out. Well, I can also cancel out zeros, which gives me 8 over 10. And of course, that reduces to 4/5. Okay, let's do one more of those. Off here to the side. Let's say we want to change 140%. Again, we would divide by 100. Knocking that percent off. You can cancel zeros. You get 14 tenths, or 7/5, or that would be 1 2/5 if we're asked for a mixed number. Now, you can also solve percent problems by doing something called the percent proportion. This is my setup for a percent proportion. These are some word problems I'm going to work through. So if you want to pause and take a snapshot of those. Okay, so the percent proportion says we put the part over the base number and equal it to the percentage rate over 100. Well, let me explain. Okay, what is 30% of 50? Notice in my percent proportion, I always have the 100. If I'm given the percentage rate, that goes over 100. Well, part and base, I'm looking for part of 50. 50 is my base number. So I've set up a proportion. Let's go to our scratch paper and solve this. Let me do this right here where we can see it and have room for our scratch paper. So I have x over 50 equals 30 over 100. I cross multiply, divide by 100. You may cancel zeros in division. And I get 15. Go back and read the problem to yourself and make sure you set this up correctly. If something looks like it's out of whack, it may be that these your numbers are in the wrong spot. So let's read this back. Okay, I'm telling you 15 is 30% of 50. That sounds reasonable to me. Okay, this one we're trying to find the percent. So on this second one, just move down here. We're saying 5 is what percent? I'm missing my percent of 8. So 5 is part of 8. Cross multiply. You might want to pause and work that out yourself. I'm just going to do this in my calculator real quick. So I have 5 times 100 and divide by 8. That's 500 divided by 8. That's 62.5. But I'm missing something. Remember, it asks for percent. There's a difference between 62.5 and 62.5%. So watch out for that. Okay, let's do one more of those, and then we'll do one that's got word problem. So number 3. We've got 8.7 is 30% of what number? Well, I know the percent goes over 100. Where does the 8.7 go? We're finding part of something. So we have that. So that's 30x, 8.7 times 100, 30x. Let's see, 8.7 times 100 will give me 870. Multiplying by 100 would move the decimal over 2 places. Divide by 30. And we'll just use a calculator on this. 870 divided by 30. And we get 29. And that's a number, not a percent. 8.7 is 30% of 29. Sounds reasonable. So I think we're good. Okay, now these are inside of a story problem. And so let's look at this first one here. Number 4, it says Television City asks you to make a 15% down payment, which is going to be $210. And we're trying to find the cost of this entire set. 15%, the down payment is $210. So what does that look like for number 4? Well, the 15 goes over 100. 210 is 15% of the cost. We want to know what 100% of the cost is. What's the cost of the TV? So this would be our setup here. You might want to pause and work this out. And I'm going to go ahead and just get our answer real quick. Cross multiply, then divide by 15. Okay, what is the cost of the set? $1,400. That sounds reasonable. Now, if I had flip-flopped these and gotten an answer, it would not have made sense. Okay, let's see, number 5, it says to account for waste, we need to order more than it's supposed to be used. That makes sense. When you're building something, you're going to have some waste there. And so we're given the percent And let's see, 15 is used, but how much should we order? We want to over order, so we want to know how much is 120%. The whole job only calls for 15, but we know we need to get more. So we cross multiply, and you should get 18 feet. Okay, let's just check that real quick. Okay, and that makes sense to order more than we need. And then finally, we have this 12 out of 400 computer chips are going to be rejected. What percent? There's our clue that we're looking for, our percent. And this is the part out of the 400 that were defective. And we can cross multiply and solve that. And we get 3, and remember the answer is not 3, it's 3%.